I feel weird recording dressed like this right now. If you're watching this in the future, it was a dress-up day. Okay, it was Taurus Day, remember? Alright, that's why I'm dressed like a weirdo. But today we are reading chapter 34 of Absolutely Truly. On the morning that the Pumpkin Falls Centennial Winter Festival began, I awoke to the sound of dripping. "Listen, Miss Maple," I cried, throwing back the covers and leaping out of bed. "Do you hear that?" The hardwood floor was freezing, and I hopped quickly over to the window, dancing from one foot to the other as I peered outside, and sure enough, the icicles on the eaves were starting to melt. The January thaw finally arrived. "Whew, better late than never," said the weatherman on the kitchen radio a few minutes later. He sounded jubilant. "Looks like the warming trend will linger into early next week, so all you maple farmers out there can take a deep breath and relax. Your sap run is safe." Lauren had beaten me downstairs to breakfast, and hearing this, she ran into the closet under the front stairs to call Annie. Not that the Freemans wouldn't have figured it out for themselves by now. All they had to do was open their front door, which is exactly what I did a few minutes later. I stood on the doorstep a moment, inhaling deeply. For once, my nostrils didn't freeze together like the way they had ever since I arrived to Pumpkin Falls. The air was practically balmy. Miss Maple dashed past me and scampered down the path as frisky as a puppy. I was feeling pretty frisky myself, even though I knew it wouldn't last. Dad had explained to us one night at the dinner table recently that New England's famous January thaw is only a sneak preview of the warmer months ahead. "Old Man Winter's a real tease," he'd said. "Every January, he lets back a little bit and takes pity on us by opening up the window a crack and giving us a peek at the spring. And then he slams it shut again and hammers us with more cold weather." "JT, you have the soul of a poet," Mom had told him, kissing the top of his head. My father snorted, but he looked pleased. As I stood there, soaking up the sunshine, I didn't care if it was just a sneak preview. I'd take weather like this any day. Energized, I took a shower and dressed in record time. Then we walked to school as usual with my brother and sisters. Pumpkin Falls looked anything but usual, however. Flags were flying everywhere, and there was bunting on the steeple, and a big Pumpkin Falls Centennial Winter Festival banner hung across the front of the town. The streets around the village green were lined with cars as spectators and news media crowded around to watch the sculptors at work. The Pumpkin Falls Winter Festival is famous for its snow sculpture competition, and people come from all over to enter it and watch the sculptors at work. Gramps and Lola send us pictures of it every year. Last year, there was a fairy tale theme, which meant every village green was covered with dragons and knights and castles, and lots of familiar characters. You know, Snow White and all the dwarves, Jack and the Beanstalk, Rapunzel, Cinderella, the Three Little Pigs, that sort of thing. Cinderella won, probably because of the huge pumpkin carriage. Pippa tugged on my hand. "Look, there Nathaniel looketh like a spaniel." I glanced over at the sculptures on the green, and sure enough, there was a larger-than-life snow sculpture of our famous ancestor, big nose and all, Nathaniel Daniel. Because it's the centennial, this year's theme celebrates the history of Pumpkin Falls. So, in addition to Nathaniel Daniel Lovejoy, there was a giant 100 in the center of the green, a big maple leaf, and a nearly life-size replica of the covered bridge complete with frozen waterfall. Plus, there was a huge Paul Revere bell in the facade of the general store. A long line of people stretched in front of it, waiting to have their pictures taken on the front porch of the giant rocking chair carved out of snow. "Can I fit in it too?" Pippa begged. "Please." "We'll come back later, Pipster, when it's not so crowded," Hatcher promised. School was mercifully brief. No one could concentrate anyway. Everyone was too keyed up over the 3 days of activities ahead, which kicked off right after lunch with the Winter Festival Spelling Bee, for which Annie Freeman had been practicing for weeks. In addition, there were a bunch of sporting events. Ski races, figure skating, and speed skating on the rink at college, and other games and meets including basketball, hockey, wrestling, and of course, our swim team's grudge match against Thornton. Coach Maynard had been firing us up all week for it. Tomorrow morning was the famous polar bear swim at Lake Lovejoy, which is about the dumbest idea in history in the world if you ask me, which nobody ever asks me. Who'd be dumb enough to jump into a frozen lake? A bunch of people, apparently, because the Patriot Bugle was reporting a bumper crop of entrants. All of the stores in town were offering special sales and promotions for the weekend, too. Donuts at Lou's would be 3 for a nickel, the same price they would 100 years ago. Haircuts at the Quick Clips were going for 2 bits, which my father told us used to mean a quarter. And the general store employees were giving out free bags of penny candy with every purchase. The Patriot Bugle had published a special commemorative edition complete with then and now photographs of Pumpkin Falls, along with interviews of the town's oldest citizens. The highlight of the weekend, at least for everybody but me, was the big dance tomorrow at Town Hall. Of course, since the festival weekend happens to coincide with Valentine's Day this year, they're making an even bigger deal out of it than usual. Mrs. Abramowitz is the chair of the entertaining and decorating committee, and my mother, who's been helping her out, says Cha-Cha's mom has been on the dither for weeks. I've never been involved in so many decisions involving hearts in my entire life. Paper hearts, sparkly hearts, hearts that light up with hearts and spin with hearts that blow bubbles. Did you know that you can order heart-shaped ice cubes? I did not, and I didn't care. I was not looking forward to Cotillion. I hated the thought of being on display for the whole world to watch and laugh at. I'd probably trip over my own big feet right in front of everybody. I pushed the thought away. No point stewing about it tomorrow when I had enough to stew about today. Mainly our meet against Thornton. The bleachers at the swim center were packed by the time I came out of the locker room. I spotted my friends and family. They were all there, even Dad. Only Aunt True was missing. She volunteered to stay behind at the bookstore so that my father could come and watch me. She sent a text earlier that made me laugh, though. There was just one word in it. Victory. Aunt True is a total lovejoy when it comes to sports. I was swimming a trio of races. The 200 medley relay, the 50 freestyle, and last but far from least, the 100 individual medley. Not for a while, though. First up were the younger kids and the newbies, including Lucas. "That's my boy," I heard Mrs. Winthrop announce proudly to no one in particular, as Lucas stepped up onto the block. Aunt True says it's positively painful to look at Lucas in a bathing suit, and she's got a point. I've shared the pool with some skinny swimmers before, but Lucas Winthrop takes the cake. From his knobby knees to his protruding ribs and collarbone, he's practically a walking anatomy lesson. Mrs. Winthrop stood up, her video camera clutched nervously in her hands. She's still convinced her son is going to drown somehow. When you think about it, it's amazing he's even allowed out of the house. Whenever I see Mrs. Winthrop, I remind myself to be grateful that I still have a dad and not just one overprotective parent. Lucas doesn't seem to miss his father too much. At least he never talks about it. But then again, he was just a baby when his father died, so he doesn't really know any different. Lucas didn't drown, of course. In fact, not only did he swim his best time ever, he won his first race. The Pumpkin Falls half the bleachers exploded as he churned his way down the home stretch and slapped the wall. Mrs. Winthrop almost dropped her video camera. She was cheering so hard. I was yelling my head off, and so was the rest of the team. Lucas looked at the clock in disbelief and then looked over at us with a huge grin on his face. I wanted to jump in the water and hug his little hummingbird self. As I got ready for my first race, I hoped that Lucas's win was a good omen. And it seemed like it was, because I won the 50 freestyle handily with our relay team, which had been performing unevenly, posted a faster time than any of our own practices, even though technically we lost to Thornton. I didn't care so much about the races, though. It was the 100 individual medley I was worried about. That one is always my race. "Good luck," said one of the Thornton swimmers as we stepped onto the blocks. I hate when my opponents are cheerful. It makes them really hard to dislike. "You too," I told her, trying to mean it. The bell rang and I arced forward, my dive perfectly aimed into the water with the best possible position. Half a dozen strong dolphin kicks, break the surface, arms spread like wings, I told myself. I flew down my lane, did a quick double touch on the gutter, then pushed into a backstroke. Every breath, every movement, exactly how I imagined it. The thing about swimming is it's all mental. Yes, of course, it's that you've been working hard in practice, but that's second nature when it comes down to the actual race. The trick is to picture yourself swimming every lap, picture your time, how many breaths you'll take, how far each stroke you will take, all of it. And most of all, you have to picture yourself winning, which I have been doing for days. I didn't hear the crowd. I didn't hear anything but my own breathing and my own fierce wanting to win. I moved effortlessly from butterfly to backstroke to breaststroke. As I approached the flip that would take me into the final freestyle, I was neck and neck with the swimmer in the lane next to me. I tucked under, certain that my height would give me an advantage in the home stretch. Or not. As my legs flew over my head and I corkscrewed into a turn, my left heel slammed against the tile hard. Jolted by the pain, I faltered. Only for a split second, but that was long enough to throw me off my rhythm. I scrambled to recover, pouring it on as I powered the final finish. But it was too late. I lost by 0.3 of 1 second. I looked up at the clock in disbelief. The extra inch I'd grown since moving here had knocked me off my balance and cost me the race. I'd been betrayed by my dumb feet. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see Hatcher up in the bleachers tapping his fingers under his chin in our chin-up shorthand. I shook my head at him and closed my eyes. Why did I have to be so tall? I dragged myself out of the pool, not even stopping to congratulate the winner. I didn't care if it was rude. I just wanted the shelter of the locker room. Tough luck, sweetheart, my mother said while later, when I finally emerged, she gave me a hug. Way to hang in there, added my father, which is Lovejoy speak for loser, which is exactly how I felt for the rest of the day. What happened in the book? What thoughts do you have in your head, and what feelings do you have in your heart?